Welcome to NeuroMovement Revolution with Anat, Baniel, where you will discover breakthrough possibilities for your life through the brain's power to change. We're so happy that you can join us in making the impossible possible.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to our NeuroMovement Revolution podcast. Good morning, Anat.
Good morning. Doesn't it feel like it's been a long time?
It really does.
Yeah.
You were on with Randy Roberts, our
Yes.
amazing parenting consultant, parenting as leadership consultant. But yes, it's been 4 weeks since we were on together.
Yes, it feels very long, and I miss you, and I missed being with the people. Yes, everybody. I really missed everybody.
So thank you for joining us today for the first part of the podcast will be episode 16 already. And the topic of episode 16 is flexible goals, the sixth essential for positive brain change. So where shall we start with that?
Well, we'll start that it is another wonderful essential and can be quite challenging. So where to start? That's a very good question. So let's start in general first. We are raised like keep your eye on the ball,
Keep your eye on the prize.
Keep your eye on the prize. That's right. Also on the ball?
And the ball.
Okay. And what else? We are really trained to try and achieve and create goals, list goals. Every January 31st or 1st, we make a list of our goals for the coming year. And goals are important. The question is not whether we have goals or not. Goals are good. They help organize our action and give direction to our life and so on. However, the question is how we go about achieving the goals. What are our ideas of how to achieve the goals? And this essential points out in terms of the brain and brain change and learning, and in this case specifically with children with special needs, many of our sometimes even unconscious cultural habitual ways and emotional attitude to achieving our goals are counterproductive to what the child actually really needs. So when a child has a challenge, be it like if they had an in utero stroke and we just focus on the arm and hand, and the child is fisted and they don't use it. We'll take that as a first example. The initial impetus, we want that hand to open, we want that hand to move and manipulate and learn to do things. Very often, and even sometimes in therapeutic approaches, we pry the hand open and we pry the hand open and we pry the hand open. And even if we succeed in prying the hand open, I'm sure those of you who have either worked with children who have this condition or are parents, it really doesn't work. That's why you have to keep prying the hand open over and over again. And then we can up it, this approach, and create a brace to the hand, that plastic brace that holds it open. But that, I'm sure, again, people have experienced, does not get the child to actually learn to move and get dexterity and use of the hand. And maybe sometimes it helps a bit. I haven't seen that, but anything can happen. However, I have seen more often where doing that actually retracts. The child learns that it's uncomfortable, there's a focus, I've had, not very often, but I've had a number of children that initially when I started working with them, I tried, when I even touched the hand, they just retracted the arm and just didn't want me to even focus on it. So how can we approach the goal? And what I call it is flexible goals. So we have a goal and we form the goal. And the first step is to know that if we had known how to do it, how to achieve that goal, we would have done it already. It's very simple. If we knew the steps, we would take the steps, and then we would get and achieve our goal. So if my goal is to get to the grocery store, I know which one I'm going to. I've gone there many times. And, I can have in my list of to-dos for that day, go to the grocery store and get, cucumbers. So I know how to do it. I can achieve that goal. Usually when we talk about goals, we talk about things that we haven't accomplished yet, and we don't actually know how to do. We assume it's possible. We look for it to be possible, but we don't know how to do it. So that is like step one. Is really not in a bad way or in an unhappy way, but to be in the presence that I have this goal, I've cherished this goal, I think it's valuable. I think it's very valuable for children to learn to use their hands. And it's a very, very important and worthy goal. And I think it's very important that parents want to invest in that goal manifesting. So, and at the same time, I'm in the presence of that goal. I'm also in the presence that I truly have no clue how it's going to go. And that's perfect. Because if I had to know exactly how it's going to go, and I don't, then I better just quit. So what do? I start, and that's very often for us, we don't start where things are not working. And we don't start by asking the child or an adult to do that which we know, and perhaps they know, that they can't do. We don't ask people to do what they can't do, and especially if they have a challenge and something that holds them back from doing it. Because what they're going to do, if they're going to try to do it, they are going to fail. And when they fail, what they learn, what the brain learns, the brain does not select in the learning in the sense of I don't want to learn the mistakes. We learn our experience. We begin, and we don't focus on what's not working. So, for example, from a neurological point of view, if with a child that they've never learned to do something, it's very different than an adult. I'll give for a moment an example that now recent research is actually, they validated that. For me, it was there already. So let's say the right hand got, spastic paralysis due to the stroke. Normally people start focusing on the right hand and going to make it work. And as many people know, and there's hundreds of thousands of people that have a stroke every year in the United States, that almost always the hand doesn't come back into functioning when it's strong enough, and that's the approach. But they discovered that if you start doing the movements you would like the person to be able to do on the side that does work, and then you do some on the side that is the affected side, actually you get better outcomes. Excuse me. So when we have this attitude to the goals, we allow for creativity to show up. So if the child, instead of trying to get the child to use their hand, first of all, you do it on the other hand, and you engage, and you get them to do stuff with their feet. And then you get them to do stuff with their foot, and they're maybe, because there's loss of differentiation, and this is the part that's supposed to be most differentiated when there's brain damage, you ask them to do things with their shoulder, with their tush, then with this, and then the pattern, you integrate the arm and you help map the arm in the brain. So that is just an example. So flexible goals, child on the autism spectrum, we have questions that we're going to address. So we're going to answer current questions as you type them in, and also we are going to start catching up on questions that we didn't have a chance to do because we run out of time. So we are gradually going to also catch up on give some time to previous questions. And so we looked at those questions. How do I get my kid to look at my eyes? great goal, but trying to kind of stand and look in my eyes, look in my eyes, look in my eyes, and especially if you say it directly and it doesn't work once or twice, back off. Look for other ways, creative ways, and then you get open. And if you look at some of the greatest creations, like it's a very easy because it's visual, the Archimedes, right? So he was looking to find the weight of the gold to the crown was already done, and so there were stones and things, and how could he give the king to let them know how much gold is in their crown? And he didn't have an answer, and he was looking and he was searching and he was attempting and he was playing with it. It's not that he wasn't doing anything. And again, when we look to reach our goal, it's not like we sit and say, oh, I shouldn't have a rigid goal, so I'm doing nothing. But it's your attitude, and then more information can come in. And then one day, the story goes that he stepped into the bathtub and it flowed over, and all of a sudden, that event helped all the other permutations to pull it together for a way to do it. So I think I'd like just to open the floor to questions. And let's do Karen questions or comments for the next 10 minutes or so, and then let's do previous questions, okay?
Absolutely. So at the moment we have no live questions.
Okay.
And the next episode in the podcast series is going to be where we really focus on those pre-submitted questions. One thing I wanted to bring in as I'm hearing you talk is that you have some very succinct phrases that often just sum up so much in so few words. And related to flexible goals, the one that always comes to my mind is, if he could, he would. If she could, she would. Mm-hmm. We have this desire that the child maybe is at a certain age and should be doing something. And that's such a big driver, particularly when you see other children around that may be doing that thing that your child isn't doing. So there's this driving force to try and get the child to do that. But if they could do it at that moment, they would be doing it. So how can we back off from that fix? It's like fixing. It's going from connecting to trying to fix. How can we back off, connect to where the child is now? Because that's the only place we can move from.
This is a very challenging question, because for us, it's relative. It's like it's the way we operate, right? Yeah. But we can operate that way because we have tools as practitioners as what to do. And I think maybe something that could help parents, have some access is, instead of looking at the performance of a specific activity or a specific skill, if they looked and thought in the imagination, right, in the assumption, at the brain. And what can I do now to get that brain to do its job even better? Because the truth of the matter with our work is that we get children to move from the no to the yes, from the impossible to the possible. We are also doing the context of the subject in a certain way. Eventually we hone in. But what I can say that I'm doing is I'm working with what presents itself in the child right now. So let's say if you take your kid to the park, to the playground, or you're feeding your child, or you're getting ready to go to school, or whatever it is that you're doing, if there is a little bit of time, not when you're rushing to get out the door to go to an appointment, but when you have time, you start employing the essentials. You see where the child is maybe operating in a slightly rigid way or, compulsive way. And you look in whatever is available. It can be something that the child said. We talked today in the practitioner meeting, and you told about the child on the spectrum, and that was, hitting or doing something with a mat over and over and over and over again. Just like very often kids on the spectrum tend to do things like in a very compulsive, repetitive way. You didn't you took him and where you said, you can do it, but do it I'm going to count 3 times and then stop for 2 times and then count. And then he came back, he started negotiating with you, which is perfect, because a negotiating brain is a brain that is like trying to figure out how to go to get his way. But now it's not like a compulsive, forced, out of control activity that is so typical for this boy. But it's like now he's intending to do it. Now he's aware that he's doing it. And now he's trying to manipulate you, Neil, and trick you and convince you to back off from what you said. So when he came, I won't go into all the content, but when he came back, you said, well, if that's what you'll do, then then what I will want to do. And you started moving it into, it could be like this, but if that happens, this happens. And then the child just calmed down and actually did it in his imagination, which is phenomenal. So moving it all the way from boom, 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 and kind of like really the brain unavailable to pay attention to anything, unavailable to learn. In probably this didn't take more than 2-3 minutes.
It's very quick. Yeah.
And then he becomes intelligent. And when he acts in an intelligent way, he's having a good time, because being intelligent feels good.
Yeah. And he left the lesson really calm. And often I was told his afternoon lessons, he's not calm.
Yeah, because it's your first lesson with him. And he was extra calm. So you look the intent, instead of a goal, you have your goals, but the intent in the here and now is to use what's here, that you use it intelligently, calling upon and evolving the intelligence and the freedom of that nervous system to find solutions and to get out of a rut.
So we do have a question here. It is actually about a little boy on the spectrum. It's from Anuradha. She says, my son is on the ASD spectrum. He says bathroom like a random script, but we found out what he wants to say is actually different things using his letterboard. For example, can I join for a movie? How can I help him slow down to say what he thinks instead of his random script?
Okay, so
Anuradha.
So Anuradha, thank you for your question. It's a perfect question, and it's also perfect in the sense that we get this kind of question with exact question but different contents, right? So the structure, the thinking of your thinking is excellent, because many people will come with a similar way of formulating. Stay there because I want to go. So if you read it again, just a question. My child is on the ASD.
My son is on the ASD spectrum. He says bathroom like a random script. But we found out that what he really wants to say is a whole host of different things when he manages to spell it out on his letterboard. For example, can I join for a movie? And then the question, how to help him slow down to say what he thinks instead of just this random script. So
the way I hear your question, which is perfectly fine, it's not a criticism, it's just an opportunity to unpack the question, is how, as you assume that by slowing down, you will, quote unquote, make him say what he wants to say. We don't know. He's acting like in aphasia, like somebody who has a stroke. And what was it that Tessa kept saying?
Orange.
So this 28-year-old, and by the way, oh my God, we're going to be showing the film, A Life Unbound, free of charge on August 8th, and we're going to announce it, on the website and email her and so on in a few days. So you could see Tessa, and she tells about it, and she was in speech therapy, and every time they asked her a question, she wanted to say whatever she wanted to say, and orange came out of her mouth. And so that is so your son's brain, he hasn't had a stroke as far as I assume he hasn't, but this is a known condition where the brain all of a sudden, what comes out of the mouth is not what the person is trying and intending to say. And slowing down can be helpful, but slowing down with the intent that the slowing down will give a specific outcome, and your child knows that, because he's already knowing that what his mouth says, what comes out of his mouth, and what he wants to say doesn't match. He doesn't need convincing. So what he actually needs, he needs more freedom around it and not try to do it, because he's already an expert in not being able to say things except at times, at least bathroom. So you know, what I would do with him is any number of things, but probably the first thing to do is to reassure him. And it's wonderful you discovered he's not just saying bathroom, because that means you're attuned to him and, you know, you're taking interest in him in a way that you can discover it. But you say to him, sweetheart, it's okay if you say bathroom. We're going to use the board if necessary. So when the bathroom is not what you want, you know, you can make a sign with the hand. Just do this and we'll take the board. And then, so first of all, there's freedom. The anxiety goes. So otherwise, the anxiety and the intensity tends to drive us to do just what we are already doing and what we are afraid that we will be doing. Anyway, I don't want to go further on that part. And then what you do is you look in other places in your son where he doesn't have as much freedom as he could have. Like, for instance, maybe he moves his back a certain way, or he uses his arm a certain way. Something that doesn't seem like it's at all related to speaking and to being able to articulate that which he wants to articulate. And you start doing variations and play and this and that. I could give you infinite number of examples, but something where you gently use the essentials to give your son more freedom rather than compulsive, predictable, basically out of control way of doing, because he has no choice. He has no freedom. And we just worked this past week with a girl from Turkey. And no, is she from Turkey, the one with the bad posture?
I didn't work with her.
That we talked about.
Yeah.
Are they?
They're Turkish family.
Yeah. They're a Turkish family. Yeah. So, and actually, we were told that they want us to work on math. I gave this girl one look, and math was out the window for a while, because I saw a child that had so little freedom in how she could move, and when she was asked a question, she took forever to answer. And I didn't know how much it was that she was just slow in processing, or that she was kind of protecting herself in trying not to fail. And it wasn't until we did a whole bunch for a few days with her where she started experiencing herself in new ways and getting more vitality, and her back was just the weakness enormous. She was put standing when she was very, very weak as a child. Anyway, and then I started doing things around numbers with her. And I had the father translate exactly what I said, because I wanted to make sure he doesn't try to make her give me the right answer, because I don't care about the right answer. I care that brain is going to go places and move and give me one wrong answer and second, until there will be a mechanism inside the child that has an understanding and can check their idea against something that tells them, is it the correct answer or not? And it was remarkable. I don't know if you watched that video, but it probably was 10 minutes that I took with minor little questions that had nothing in her world to do with math. But it was actually eventually going to come of how many gifts she had to give to the kids that came to her birthday party. And I made it so that, and she gave me just random numbers because she had no idea how to do it. And luckily, they were small enough so I could show her through drawing that, oh my God, not all the kids are getting gifts. And that woke her up. And at the end, I asked her one question, and she thought and gave me the correct answer, and I was done. It was finished. And then I heard from my teachers today that she's thinking faster, she's answering questions, she's starting to sort out math. So for your child in speech, and it doesn't mean that this will solve the problem or get you to your goal. But let me tell you, it is going to make it a whole lot more likely. So you look for ways to give him freedom and to get him to do what he wants to do. So you ask him, do you want to touch this or this, and see what, I don't know, I'm just giving you examples. I hope that's helpful. Yes, another question?
Yes, another question from Kim Van Dam. Thank you, Kim. I often hear you say to be creative with doing other things. How does someone bring their brain into a creative mode? I often go blank to think of doing something a different way.
Kim, you're just darling. Thank you for saying it. It's kind of like a catch-22, right? Because the goal to become creative cannot be accomplished by having a goal to become creative. It's impossible. However, changing your attitude to creativity, also to that, but to achieving your goal, as we are talking now, will, in a colloquial way of saying, it will relax you, because when we're anxious, I don't know if you guys notice that anxiety tends to groove us into very habitual, usually sometimes even regressive, like old patterns. So if you learn to do something new, you do it in a new way, and then a situation is scary or stressful, we tend to pop back. When you get stressed, the one thing that is really not working usually very well, especially when you're not habituated to it, is creativity. So you do with yourself what I suggested to do with this child on the spectrum. You reassure yourself. You say, oh, Anat talks about creativity, and I'm probably gonna not be creative, and I'm still a good person. Let's see what happens. And then one way to start grooving yourself, giving yourself freedom for creativity, is just doing what you're doing a little differently. So if you want to be with your child, and I'm just, again, giving a stupid example, but I don't know what exactly is happening between you and your child. So let's say that you have the habit to always putting the shirt on the child, and he has or she has the habit with the right arm first. If you're aware of it, awareness is really helpful in that respect. In this case, if you're aware of it, start with the other hand. If you always start with the shirt, start with the pants. You can even be playful with the child. Do the pants first, the underpants later. Everybody can have a good laugh. You say, oh my God, do you think this is going to work too well? Allow yourself permission to do permutations that are I'm sorry, somebody just came in. Allow yourself to permission to do permutations that you know ahead of time they're wrong. So I'll tell you a short story that I might have told before, but I think it's really, really informative. So my father, when I wrote my first book, Moving to Life, I got 2 copies from the publisher, so I sent my father one of the copies. And he's in Israel. And I don't know, a few days later, he calls me up and he says, Anat, I'm reading your book, I really like it, and so on. He said, and I was sitting, he invented something, and it was a startup, and they were having problems in production, and they asked him to find a solution. And he said, I didn't get it. I sat for 2 hours and I didn't get a response. And then what I did was I decided to do variations the way you wrote in the book. So I started giving solutions, typing them into the computer that I knew were going to be wrong. And I did this for about 10 minutes. And then I went back and I had the solution. So that's how you start bringing your creativity. You feed your brain with the wrong things or different things or unrelated things, and see what happens, and do that with your child. And that's one incredible way to manifest flexible goals. And we are at the end already.
We're at the end of this part of our podcast. So thank you very much for joining us for Essential 6, Flexible Goals. And we will see you in the next episode.
Thank you for joining us on NeuroMovement Revolution with Anat Baniel. You will find all of our podcasts and additional resources on our website, at www.anatbanielmethod.com. You can also subscribe to this podcast for free on iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Google Play, Stitcher, and TuneIn. We look forward to seeing you online for our next NeuroMovement Revolution.